Let's switch the denoiser engine from the NVIDIA AI denoiser to the default V-Ray denoiser, since it's more consistent for production rendering. With V-Ray 5, we want to make it so that you can easily create a production-ready image from start to finish, simply using V-Ray. As a result, we have introduced a new render element called V-Ray Back to Beauty, which automatically creates the necessary render elements you need to reconstruct the beauty paths in post-production. You can think of the V-Ray Back to Beauty element as a shortcut to save you time. It also ensures you don't forget to add critical elements that you might need later on to reconstruct the beauty paths in compositing. Since I'm using the denoiser, I'm also going to check on the denoise checkbox for the Back to Beauty element. So that way, the denoising operator is applied to all of the Back to Beauty render elements consistently. Now, let's also add the brand new V-Ray Light Mix, which is a new render element that we'll need to add in order to take advantage of the powerful light mixing capabilities in V-Ray 5. When the V-Ray Light Mix render element is enabled, you can then render your scene and further tweak your lights in the new VFB, both during IPR and even after a production render is complete. This means that you can tweak the intensity and color of lights and light-emitting materials, as well as enable or disable lights altogether, without needing to re-render your final output. You can even work faster if you mix your lights while rendering interactively, since you don't have to navigate to individual light sources to tweak their parameters. If we scroll down in the light mix settings and take a look at the Group By dropdown, you'll see that we can specify how to group the lighting information in the light mixer. In this case, I've already organized these lights into separate layers to manage them more easily, so I'm going to set this to group my lights by layers. Now, the lighting information for each layer will be stored in a separate channel. Note that for whichever mode you choose, the light mix will also create self-illumination and environment render elements, which will store light-emitting materials and environment information respectively. Okay, great. Now that I've got my render elements set up, let's prepare our render settings. I'm going to switch to the bucket rendering mode for production and set my noise threshold to 0.008. Otherwise, I'll leave the rest of my settings at the defaults. Now that we've got everything set up, let's go ahead and press render. Alright, great. Now that our production render is finished, let's jump into the new light mixer and see how we can create a variety of different lighting scenarios without any need to re-render the image. To access the light mixer, open the right-hand Layers panel and then simply select the source layer in the layer panel hierarchy. We're already on the light mix mode, but if it says Source RGB or Composite, you can easily switch to the light mix mode at the top of the Properties section. You'll see in the light mix parameters below that we have a UI which lists all of the lights, grouped by the layers that I set up in the scene. There are also various options available, such as the ability to save and load light mix presets, send light mix modifications to the compositor, or even transfer our light mix tweaks back to the lights in the scene. Alright, let's explore how we can build a new lighting scenario here from the ground up, starting with toggling off the All checkbox at the top. You'll see that our render is now pitch black as no lights are enabled at the moment. Let's now enable some of the more subtle ambient lights in our scene, beginning with the self-illumination lights. Then, let's also enable the lights car for the car's headlights. I think these headlights could be a bit brighter, so let's increase their multiplier to 4. Keep in mind that a light's standard multiplier will have a default value of 1. Alright, so far so good. Next, I'm going to turn on Lights Floor Charge A, and let's increase the multiplier to 2. I'll also turn on the Lights Garage for the light that is above the car. One of the amazing things about the light mixer is that you can change the colors of your lights, enabling you to completely reimagine the mood of your scene. For example, let's change the lights garage color. You'll see as I drag around in the color picker that the VFB updates the results very fast, making it so that I can find a color to suit my image very quickly. I think I'll go with a light blue here. Note that generally, we recommend rendering your lights as a white neutral color if you plan on doing light mixing. That way, you can focus on tinting your lights completely in post-production, without any color interference from the light's existing color tone. Alright, let's move forward and turn on the lights columns to begin lighting up the room and the space around the car. I'm also going to increase their multiplier to 2 so that they provide some more warmth and contrast in the image. Great, now let's also turn on the lights fill to add a fill light to our scene. It's definitely way too subtle though at first, so I'm going to crank it up a lot. Let's try setting the multiplier to 10. There we go, now I'm liking how this looks. If you get to a stopping point where you're happy with your results, you can simply press the Save button above. This will save your settings as a light mix preset file, which you can then load in later. In this case, I'll save mine as Light Mix Preset 01. Okay, now that we've saved our first preset, let's continue tweaking our lights to get a different look. I'll start by enabling the lights pots. These are from the lights that are around the base of the trees in our scene. Next, let's turn on the lights floor platform. This gives our scene a very nice rim of light around the room at the base of the wall. That's looking good so far, so next, let's enable the lights ceiling so we can shine some light on the furniture in our scene. I think the ceiling lights are too dim though, so let's increase their multiplier to 3. Great! If you'd like, we can also solo a particular light by holding Alt and clicking on it. This will turn off all other lights except the one you clicked on. Then you can Alt-click on it again to return to your lighting setup as you had it. I'd also like to change the color of the ceiling light to something warmer. Let's try a slightly yellowish color. There we go, I think that's looking pretty good. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and press Save again, and save this as Light Mix Preset 02. Alright, now that we've saved 2 presets of our own, let's also try loading in some presets that I saved in advance. Pressing the Load button here, let's load in this preset called Light Mix Preset 03. And there we go. You can see that it is loaded in just fine, and our light mix settings have updated to reflect the different colors and multiplier values for the lights, and we can even further tweak this if we wanted to. Let's go ahead and load in the Light Mix Preset 04 as well. You can see that this preset is quite moody, and showcases how we can also use light mixing to achieve some very drastic differences in mood and tone, all by simply playing with the colors and multiplier values. And if you'd like to quickly compare saved presets, you can simply click on the Recent Presets icon here and switch between the Light Mix preset files we've loaded in to preview them. Note that the Recent Presets path location checks in the latest loaded preset files folder. We can also simply press the up and down arrow keys to switch between the recent presets very rapidly for comparison. Now, you can see how using the light mixer, we can quickly create a bunch of different lighting moods using a single rendered image, as well as save and load presets, and without needing to re-render anything. This saves you time while allowing you to explore different creative looks, all within the new V-Ray 5 VFB. And that's not all. Once you've got your light mix settings set up to your satisfaction, you can then send them over to the brand new compositing layer editor, where you can take your post-processing even further to refine your image. You can also press the reset button here, which resets all light mix changes to default values. However, if you do decide to send any of your light mix changes to the compositor, you'll find that all of the tweaks you made in the light mixer will be described in the relevant render elements. Okay, let's move on from the light mixer and switch over to the composite mode. The brand new compositor in V-Ray 5 offers a layer tree system that makes it possible to do nuanced color corrections set blending modes, and combine render elements, all within the new VFB. You'll see that all of the Back to Beauty render elements were neatly organized into a folder for us here. Whenever you add the V-Ray Back to Beauty render element before starting your render, V-Ray automatically creates this folder containing the necessary render elements for reconstructing the beauty pass. You'll see that we can select a render element layer to reveal its properties below. We can also hold Shift and select multiple layers, and view their properties below together. If we press the visibility or eye icon to hide multiple layers, we can reveal them one by one to see how the layers stack on top of one another. As you can see, the layer system applies corrections from the bottom to the top, meaning layers on top of the stack are considered in the foreground, and the result of all layers below is considered the background. The only exception to this is nested layers, which are executed after their parent, which we'll cover in a moment. Also, note that the display correction layer at the very top specifies the display color space of the resulting image or composite in the frame buffer. Alright, let's take a look at the V-Ray lighting element here and explore its properties below. You'll see here that I can adjust the layer's multiplier value, control its opacity, and select from a wide variety of blending modes at our disposal. Alright, let's explore how we can do some further color corrections here to improve our image. With color corrections like exposure and white balance, you can choose to apply them to a single layer instead of the entire composite. To do this, simply select a layer and then create a new correction, or you can drag a correction layer onto another layer. Let's select the V-Ray reflection layer, and from the Create Layer dropdown, let's add a Curves correction. You'll see that the Curves layer has been applied to the V-Ray reflection element specifically, as indicated by the downward arrow icon that is pointing to its parent. Now, let's tweak the curves a bit to help boost the reflections in our image. If we double-click on the curve, we'll create a new Bezier point. We can drag on its handles to tweak it, or right-click on the handles to get a context menu, where you can choose from different interpolation modes, or edit the point values to input specific X and Y coordinates. If we right-click elsewhere in the curve editor, you can switch the graph's theme, save and load B-curve files or ACV curve files from Photoshop, or enable the snap to grid mode. We can also select between different RGB channels to tweak those colors specifically. For this image, I'd like to simply increase the strength of the reflections without altering their color, so I'll just click and drag this point to bring out the reflections a bit. Okay, great! Now that you've seen how we can do color corrections using curves, let's take a look at another powerful new correction tool, the Filmic Tone Map. First, let's deselect any layers and then create a Filmic Tone Map correction so that it is added to the top of our layer tree. The Filmic Tone Map allows you to control different types of mapping curves, as well as apply gamma correction and select a color space. Tone mapping is the process of rescaling the high dynamic range values in an image to within the visible interval. This is usually done in a non-linear fashion, for example with a custom curve, and the user has control over the parameters of the tone mapping operator. Note that all our Filmic Tone Map operators act globally on the image and lack any local function. Let's take a look at how the different tone map types here impact the image by clicking on the dropdown. I'll first select the linear type. Now, we can use the up and down arrow keys to switch between the different types for a quick comparison. As you can see, each tone map type has a different effect on the overall light and dynamic range of the image. In this case, I'm going to leave it on the power curve option, and then let's make a few more tweaks below. The toe and shoulder controls here allow you to adjust the tone map's curve, which you'll see adjusts along with the image when I bring the toe length slider down. Let's also adjust the toe strength. And lastly, bump up the shoulder strength just a tiny bit. You can see below that the curve visualization is updated to reflect the changes we made to these parameters. There we go! Now you can see how these different tone map types can be used to give your image a much more contrasty and dynamic looking result. Once I've finished compositing, I can also save my layer tree setup as a preset by simply clicking the Save Layer Tree Preset button up top. I'll save this as Layers Preset 01. Note that layer tree presets are not scene unique, meaning if you save a layer tree preset with composite corrections, you can also use the preset with another image, so long as the image is rendered with the same render elements that are saved with the preset. You can also easily save universal presets that exclude any composite or light mix corrections if you only add and/or modify layers above the source layer. Just to show you what it would look like to load in different settings, let's click the Load Layer Tree Preset button to the right, and select Layer Preset 02, which is a preset that I set up in advance. Now you can see that the new layer tree has replaced the one that we had just set up. And the results are clearly visible, as our image has a noticeably warmer look and feel to it. Now, similar to the light mix presets, we can also use the quick axis icon to quickly switch between different presets for comparison. Note that the quick axis searches for presets at a path you specify in the VFB settings, under the Layers tab. When you're all done compositing and happy with your image, just don't forget to save your render out of the VFB by clicking on the Save icon. If you click and hold on the icon, you will get a drop-down with additional options that let you save all channels to separate files, or save all channels to a single file using the EXR or VR image formats. In this case, I'll save all channels to a single file as a VR image. Alright, now you've seen how easy it is to quickly customize and composite your renders using the new V-Ray frame buffer. With a powerful suite of color correction controls, blending modes, and the ability to tweak specific render elements to your liking, you can now go beyond rendering to get stunning looking production images, all within V-Ray 5.